First of all, of course, I hold the very strong sentiments, almost akin to what Alan has said. I am now going to give you a practical analysis of exactly what makes the UN almost non-existent within the lenses of an African. He has given the historicity of its commencement of 1945, and of course, obviously, the problems for which it was an answer. We are now dealing with different challenges. And obviously, the manner in which it was coached, it can no longer answer to the challenges available, even by practice. The United Nations, when you look at it, what is the implementing entity of all the decisions, factors and combinations of the United Nations? How do resolutions get implemented? What is the faucet origo? What is the real origin of what actually makes it a logical necessity for the UN to even be mentioned as a factor or a combination in any of the problems that exist? Number one, we are looking at, obviously, the normative instruments that establish the rules of the game. Implementability of the provisions of the normative instruments and the players. Now, when you talk about the objects for which it was formed, if it was for peace and security, okay, we have got close to 50, between 50 to 60 conflicts in the whole world. Africa has got the majority of up to around 28 conflicts. It is not represented as a member of the P5. So it has no role. It is never a penny holder. The penny holders will make decisions on what happens in terms of drafting resolutions of the UN Security Council, in terms of implementation of, for example, solutions to be to apply to the DRC. The penny holder has got the majority of companies practicing mineral extraction in DRC. So clearly, what is going to be the nature of the resolution that will actually apply as a solution to the conflicts in the DRC? So clearly, the United States as the penny holder, having the majority of companies with interest in the DRC, will definitely make sure that you elongate the conflict to the extent that there is no substantive government that can address the idea of minerals. Number two, countries with almost no conflict at all. When you look at Europe, between 3 to 5 conflicts, they are members of the they have got a P5 member. Now, Alan has just told you, a whole continent with over 1.5 billion people does not have a say in terms of what happens.
And they think they are participating.
Yes. So what do you call the UN? Number two, the objects for which we want to control, you know, Professor, the objective reason why we want to control conflicts is because of criminality that actually accompanies a conflict. So what happens? Criminality has had its own protocols that have been established. All, of course, all having its own, for example, the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. If you are to look at it and the responsibility of partner states to respect obligations, what are the players doing? The United States, for example. It quickly runs around the whole globe trying to establish bilateral relations by way of non-surrender agreements to be signed by several countries. Now, how is implementation of, for example, Chapter 7 of the Charter of the UN, reference of causes and criminalities to the International Criminal Court, how is that implementable or implementable when the United States, which is a participating country in conflicts, has signed non-surrender agreements almost with all countries, to the extent that whoever commits a mistake, commits a crime, cannot be surrendered to one of the courts established under the Vienna Convention of the Law of Treaties, of course, looking at the Rome Statute of 2003. So I am saying, the way the United Nations looks like now, it cannot operate. It is just, and whoever believes in what it can do is to, of course, you are only telling me that you have got a very great sense of humor. It cannot.
Let's leave it at that. Let me read some feedback here that has come through. Thank you, Timothy, for the show. This is Kasare from Nakawa. Please help me explain to the Otunu formula to the nation. Also, because I had the formula the UN is using for electing the UN Secretary General is being designed by Olaro Otunu, and it is called the Otunu formula. Okay. Good evening, Timothy. It is a very good thing to be able to have someone of that caliber to be up there, even as a nomination. Uganda as a country will benefit a lot if he goes through. But if he doesn't, at least we know our politics has reconcilable measures within it. Okay. This is Isaac from Lira. I think talking about the UN, it should proceed to operate like the Red Cross Society, because as for the theoretical and the impracticability objectives that are concerned, it is that German Shepherd that cannot bark and without teeth. It's an organization that is just marvelous with ideas, but impracticable with no mechanism in implementation. Fire. Thank you for the show. In Masaka, the LC, people moved in drones, cars, and were announced as the winners before it escalated. Wandera George, thank you, Wandera. Lastly but not least, okay, thank you very much for this. Finally, before we take a break, Timothy, thank you for the show. This is very informative, and I'm liking what you're discussing there. It's very educative for us who are just interested in what is happening. But also, how is this beneficial to one ordinary Ugandan? Thank you. That's okay. Yes, you were saying?
I just wanted to say that we are, of course, we are discussing, it's very important that actually we should retreat to our regional blocks. But one thing we need to remember is that the other peoples being in the UN has not stopped, or being in the regional blocks, has not stopped them belonging to the UN agency. You have ASEAN 4 countries in Southeast Asia where China belongs, Japan belongs, you have the American groups, you have the European Union. So I think we should not posture or compare the UN vis-a-vis African Union. We have each and every right to belong to the African Union or to even retreat to the East African community, but shouldn't stop us playing at that high level. I think the only challenge I find as a person who really believes in, for the purposes of identity, that we should try to retreat, like Alan is saying, and define ourselves, is this whole thing I don't understand, that even when we retreat into the AU, it's 60 to 70% paid for by foreigners, okay? By foreign donors. So even if we were to retreat there and let's say leave the UN to the African Union, what then will happen when even your budget there is largely financed by the same people with the same interests? So I think
there's an opportunity to amend that. 2016 in Kigali, they agreed that 0.2%.
Yeah, but from even beyond that, why should we even be funded 60 to 70% by foreigners? Okay. Because actually they are driving the interests there. I totally agree to what Nkrumah said, that as long as we don't have economic power, we shall still be controlled by imperialism. So we need to address that if we are really going to be people who can assert ourselves. Otherwise, we shall always be the usual African with a begging bowl controlled by others. Even when you retreat home to East African Union or African Union, the same guys follow you there and pay your budget, influence your agenda, and do everything. So if we are discussing the UN, we should discuss the same level of analysis should come into the regional bodies.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to say the formula that is being asked about, the Otunu formula, I with deference to the professor, it's basically a straw poll, a confidential poll that happens at the United Nations, which you might be a victim of because it's confidential and it is how you narrow down the candidates as to who becomes Secretary General. Is that correct? Yeah, sure. It's how you decide which candidates are going to become the Secretary General. And that was introduced by Dr. Otunu when he was president of the Security, by Otunu, he's not doctor, by Otunu when he was president of the Security Council.
Thank you.